Welcome to the Self-Storage University podcast, where you will learn the correct way to identify, evaluate, negotiate, perform due diligence on, renegotiate, finance, turn around, and operate self-storage facilities. And now, here is your host, a partner in one of the largest real estate portfolios in the U.S. with nearly $1 billion of holdings, Frank Rolfe.
The U.S. home mortgage interest rate is going to levels not seen before in 40 years. This is Frank Rolfe of the Self-Storage University podcast. We're going to be talking about the impact of higher single-family home mortgage rates and payments on the self-storage industry. Now, we're not in the single-family home business, yet in some ways, the fortunes of self-storage are tied to that single-family sector. So I broke this up into two areas, positive impacts and negative. Let's start off with the positive impact of higher mortgage payments and rates. The first is you can't sell your house, so you can't really move. This is going to be something you'll see that is going to affect most Americans. They bought a home at a really low mortgage rate, and by virtue of the low mortgage rate, their home was worth X. But now that home mortgage rates have gone up, the price of that home is now less. Why? Because people can't afford to buy it because the payments are higher. So as a result, people will be stuck. The house they bought for $500,000 now only was worth $450,000, and so they won't sell or they can't sell. So what's then going to happen if America is all stuck in their homes, which they certainly are? Well, if they want to have more space, they're going to have to make do with what they have. And one way to get more space in that house, to have more usable square footage, is to put more stuff in storage. It's always been a fact that a storage unit is kind of an extension of a single-family home. It provides the storage that in the old days, back in the 1950s and 60s, would have been found probably in closets in the garage. But today, to make those spaces usable, people put it in storage. And it only makes sense because the price they pay per month for the storage unit based on the square foot of their house is a fraction. So that's one item you'll see is more demand for storage because people simply can't move and they'll have to create new extensions of their home, new living spaces through things like self-storage. The next item is it's going to push people into the suburbs and exurbs, and I've been writing on this for years now. I'm a huge believer, and I've seen it firsthand myself since I live in an exurb of St. Louis. What's going to happen is that people are going to go and fly out of those urban markets to areas that are not only more affordable, but safer and have better schools. And you're seeing that happen all across America. If you look at the statistics from U-Haul, for example, of where people are renting U-Hauls and moving to, well, they're not moving to urban markets, that's for sure. They're moving out. Now, at the same time, as they're moving away from those urban centers, they are buying up and utilizing and renting more self-storage units in those areas. So the higher single-family mortgage rates, what you're going to see as part of that feature is going to be that people are invariably going to be doing a 180 from where they were before and moving farther out of that urban core. And if you own self-storage facilities out in those suburbs and exurbs, you will definitely benefit from that. Next, people are going to stay in apartments longer because they cannot afford their own single-family home to move into. And as a result, they are going to need storage for longer periods of time and be more stable because they're not going to segue from those apartments into single family. They're not going to be buying that larger home where they can pull the stuff out of self-storage and put it in the garage or into a closet because they cannot afford those higher monthly mortgage payments. So in many ways, you're going to see a continuation of the fact that people just are going to need storage for longer periods of time. Finally, since people really can't sell their home, that means they really also cannot move. And so they're going to be very, very sticky customers. America, for the longest time, had a huge transformation of movement. People buying one home and selling it, moving to a different neighborhood or moving across town or moving across to a different city. But you will no longer see the movement such everyone will be trapped in their home with that low mortgage rate, which they can't ever match again, nor can they get the price of the home that what they paid back again. So you'll see a lot more stability. Now, what are the negative aspects to higher single-family mortgage rates? Well, the first one is the variable rate mortgages when they reset, which many people have variable rates and not fixed rate 30-year mortgages. That is going to make those people more cash starved and they're going to look at every possible way to cut their budget, one of which would be to cut their self-storage unit. So you have to be extremely careful and watchful, because you will start to see some customers simply blow out. They'd like to keep the storage facility, but they can't because they don't have the money to do it anymore. So that's one negative attribute. Another negative attribute is going to be if you own self-storage in an urban market, well, you're in real trouble because people are moving away from you. They're not moving towards you. So as this continual wave of folks leave city centers and go out into suburbs and exurbs, those people who are unlucky enough to own storage in those urban centers, well, they're going to have nothing but bad news for the longest time. Now, there's been billions of feet recently built in those urban cores, and I have no idea what in the world is going to happen. If you look at all of these other failing sectors of real estate, they're all occurring in the urban centers. Office buildings at half occupancy nationwide. Retail, also at half occupancy in many markets. It was thought at one time the adaptive use for all that empty space was self-storage. We can imagine how that'll go over. Let's add even more millions and billions of empty self-storage square feet to what's already existing that people are leaving from. So even though it was a positive on the one side, if you own a self-storage in a suburban or exurban area, the higher mortgage rates are also going to cause even greater negative pressure on those urban cores as people looking for lesser expensive housing decide to move farther and farther out. Because by moving farther out, they can buy a home on a mortgage they finally can afford. Also, it's going to make true for many years ahead that self-storage is going to be a positive or negative just based on where you are. Again, urban areas are going to be tough. You're already seeing declining rents, declining occupancy, many more concessions required to get customers. If you drive around many urban areas today, you'll see big banners. Rent here, sign a 6-month lease and get 2 months free. The next guy will say, sign a 6-month lease and get 3 months free. And probably somewhere there's a guy who says, sign a 6-month lease and get 6 months free. So you're going to see the industry kind of break. There's going to be kind of two tranches to it. The urban owners, who will be in world of misery, and then the suburban and exurban owners, which have never seen better times. And I would say that is probably the big takeaway from the higher single-family home mortgage rates is simply you're going to see the storage industry kind of break into two components. And it's going to be feast and famine at the same time. Feast for those who own in the suburban and exurban markets, and famine for those who are unlucky enough to own big storage facilities in the urban core. Now, do I ever see this actually changing again? No, I really don't. I think what's going to happen is even if single-family mortgage rates go down again, which I'm not projecting they really ever will, but even if they did, I think so many people have now realized how superior the quality of life is as they push out of those urban areas, they're probably not going to come back. So as a result, we have long advocated if you're going to buy a storage facility, you need to do it outside of those urban centers. That is where all of the magic is going to be from this point going forward. Bottom line to it all is that higher mortgage rates aren't necessarily bad for the self-storage business, but it all depends on where you are, where your storage facility currently is, and where is the one you're looking to buy. This is Frank Rolfe, the Self-Storage University podcast. Hope you enjoyed this. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Storage University podcast. Be sure to visit us at ssupodcast.com, where you can learn the correct way to identify, evaluate, negotiate, perform due diligence on, renegotiate, finance, turnaround, and operate self-storage facilities.